Hello, hello, little rats. Welcome back to another episode of Chatty Rats. I am Sheen Jobs reporting. I just made a joke to Natalia because I'm wearing a turtleneck and I'm ready to present an essay. So, Sheen Jobs is here. And I'm joined by,
I'm wearing black leggings and a hoodie, so I'm Sheen Jobs intern, Natalia.
A. You guys, we are here for such a fun episode. I don't know if you've heard this, Natalia, but there's this discourse on TikTok where a lot of influencers are being like, I'm really unsatisfied with being an influencer because it's making my brain rot and I'm not learning, etc. And I'm like, I cannot relate because your girl loves to read and like learn. And I feel like this is where I get to like do that, like, get to have that come to life, this platform.
Literally, even me being in corporate America, like, you can plateau to the point where you do not learn. It's like, no matter what you're doing in life, it's, like, totally up to you to take the
Exactly.
extra step to learn. Now, some jobs are amazing in that they, like, build it in. Those are,
True.
like, 5% of jobs, I think, in the US. All of it is, like, you have to take it upon yourself to make it a learning opportunity. And
Yeah.
I have not been liking those videos at all, and the algorithm's like, "You wanna see this," and it keeps showing it to me because
I
I'm like,
know.
"Y'all are complaining about it, but it is a dream job for a lot of people, and the freedom that you can get if you're pretty successful at it, that's a pretty dream life." So I don't like that they're, like, shitting on it in a sense because I just feel like I'm like, "You guys don't know." It's like, "Do you not know how many opportunities you could have and how your life can, like, be really impactful?" So, as someone that sees that world as, like, a dream life because of the financial freedom and the ability to be an entertainer,
Yeah.
I'm like, "Damn, y'all are just out here just shitting on it." I'm like, "You guys don't know."
Yeah, dude, I'm, like, totally with you on it because I feel like if you have all your, like, Maslow basic needs met and you have, like, a bit of financial freedom and you have time, which is, like, the most valuable thing, you could just find ways to learn on your own and challenge your brain on your own. You don't need a job that does that unless maybe I understand it if you, like, previously had a job that you felt like gave you everything you were looking for, so you wanna go back to that, like, that I understand. But I just think there are ways regardless that we should and could be learning on our own.
That's a perspective that I think people need to have. Let's just say you do have a job that you hate. You're not fulfilled, like, just learning how to get out of your own head and being like, "Oh, how do I continue to learn if that's what I need?"
Mhm.
So, yeah, I don't like the complaining rants. I'm just like, "Guys, do something about it." But I guess to them, it is quitting and going back to their job.
Yeah, a lot of them though, I think the recent discourse I've been seeing is they're gonna do both. They're gonna do their 9 to 5 and then influence, which honestly, I think I might be down for that as well
Oh, really?
because yeah, but for me, it's I miss the structure and socialization, but that's a topic for another day.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Um, so today I'm like really excited about this topic because I've just been thinking and thinking, and I've really been liking the Atlantic. They have a lot of like thought provoking articles, and it tied into so many things I had been seeing and thinking about. Basically, this article is called How Anxiety Became Content. And I did have you read it as well. I forced you to be part of this journey with me.
No, literally, it costs money to join the Atlantic, and I was like, "Shane, I already used my free trial," and she was like, "Bitch, make a new email then." She's like, "I don't wanna hear excuses, Natalia. I want
Yeah,
to
no
hear
excuses.
solutions. I want to hear solutions."
Mhm. In this day and age where you can just make an email in 2 seconds, you gotta do it, girly. But this article is so interesting because you guys have heard us talk about the era of overcorrection, and I feel like
Mhm.
topic of today is also talking about that because I think all overcorrections start with such a good intention, and then they, like, swing the pendulum to, like, an extreme, and this is what this article talks about, how mental health becoming an identity marker is a very dangerous situation to find yourselves in, especially for children. Because being a tribal society, like humans are tribal, we want to belong. And if we give different identity markers to people to like join different tribes, they're gonna wanna do that, right? Naturally.
Yeah.
So that is the main thesis of the article.
Yeah, my little anthropologist. I love when you get all anthropologist like, "Keep it going, baby."
Yeah. Oh, if I can bring my anthropology lens as well into this. Actually, I'll bring it after I say this. But one of the interesting things that one of the researchers had coined is this phrase called prevalence inflation, which is a way to describe people, especially young people, who consume so much about anxiety disorder that they begin to process normal problems of living and life as a sign of decline in their mental health. And I thought that was interesting. The article mainly talks about like TikTokification of content, where you have all these therapists and non therapists talking about depression, anxiety in this way. And before we like get into it, of course, it's amazing that we are destigmatizing mental health. And that's where the overcorrection comes from, right? Like the good intention of we need to talk about mental health to
Right.
deal with mental health, or else people aren't going to be addressing the issues of mental health versus the point where it's just everywhere. And then you start thinking, like, oh, if I have a bad day, is that depression? Or if I'm having normal life anxieties about going on a first date or before a job interview, I have anxiety, right?
Right.
Because it's normal as humans physiologically to feel anxious, nervous, sad, happy. Like those are a normal range of emotions.
I think that's very interesting because the article does discuss this, which is that the algorithm will trap you, right? If you like video
Mhm.
X, that means that you want only content on this. And that's the
Mhm.
issue. And once again, this is not to negate people that actually have mental illnesses. I'm talking about the people that may not. And then we're
Yes.
diagnosing ourselves that we do. For example, I had a moment, I would say, of depression last year. And I was in that algorithm as well. And I honestly started to label myself as like someone that had depression because I was like in such a deep, dark hole.
Mhm.
And it was triggered by a breakup situation. And I was so, so sad. And then I started to get into that mental health loop as well. And it started to become like a self fulfilling prophecy. Like, this is my identity now. This is who I am.
Mhm.
And it even got me into an algorithm of I hate men. And
Mm. I've been down that algorithm too, girl.
and yeah, so all of a sudden I like had depression that I was like I felt more trapped in. And I think at the beginning it was like a nice release of like, oh, like people get me, people relate.
Mhm.
And that was a positive thing. But it kind of got to the point where like I was trapped in that mentality and trapped in that
Yeah.
mentality only. And that plus the hating men algorithm as well was stopping me from finding another more meaningful connection, which was bad. And like me going to therapy at the same time did help me snap out of that.
Yeah.
But that's where the article does highlight that difference, right? That there's a difference between like the stigmatizing mental health and
Yeah.
therapy media.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
your therapist is not TikTok, it's not Instagram, and that's something that's very important. It's nice to feel that feeling of people get me, this is nice, but it's not a therapist. And I think that's a big issue that we have.
Yeah, that's very real. And it's just weird if you think about it, like in between videos of someone doing their get ready with me or a video of a dog hugging a baby, you get like therapy videos in between. It's just, I don't know if that's good for our brains. But another point that I found interesting is he was talking about the dangers of it for children because as children, they want to have like different ways to identify with themselves. And he was saying this is almost becoming like another identity marker for people to connect with each other. And that becomes dangerous because when it's your identity, it's not something you can treat. It's like, I am anxiety.
Yeah, my favorite quote from the article was, "You're not your anxiety, you're so much more." And I
Yeah.
like that because it does connect to something we've said in the past, which is that identity is a good thing, but sometimes identity can become a prison of your own making. And this is something that sells because it's very clickbaity. And something that I see in comedy a lot. Doing, like, open mics every single week, a lot of bits start with, like, "So I'm in therapy," or "So who's depressed?" or
Mm.
"So I'm anxious," "So I want to die," like, literally words like that. And a lot of people laugh, but I used to have a bit about depression back when it was becoming my identity, and I've removed myself away from it because I just didn't want it to be an identity anymore, and it was, like, harming me
Mhm.
more than it was helping me, and I totally get how it can be, like, an artistic relief, but it's kind of gotten to a point, like, I've heard that bit so many times in different forms that I'm not hearing any other take on it except, "Oh, woe is me," and it's like a doomsday situation.
Yeah.
So it's, like, not a funny bit to me anymore because it's just like the funniness of it is that it's so bad, and I don't know if I love that because it's not just happening, like, on social media, I'm saying, like, it's also
Yeah.
happening in different art forms, and that's something that I had to learn in comedy. All of my comedy was about, like, "So I'm bad at dating, so I'm depressed, so I'm anxious," so, like,
Mm.
very self-deprecating comedy, and is transitioned out of that, and I think I started to trap myself in thinking that I have to be sad to be funny
Mm.
or to be artistic, and I don't think that's good for you.
Yeah.
It's
Long
it's
term.
sad because I even had a thought at the beginning of my relationship of, like, what if I'm not funny anymore because I'm not single, because I don't have the chaos of, like,
Mm.
dating shitty men, and that's such a limiting belief, you know?
Yeah, it is.
So, yeah.
It totally is. But I think of this TikTok because you were saying it definitely trickles into different art forms. And I think the interesting thing about what you're saying and why it's probably not funny is because when you hear a bit 1,000 times, it no longer is funny, right? I
Right.
feel like I've seen it so many times on Hinge too, like, people's prompts are like, "I love a girl that's on Prozac," or something about their therapist or whatever it might be, which is, like, just I don't know, like, at first it was good, but once you see it, like, on 10 profiles out of 20, you're just like, "Okay, this seems performative," right? It doesn't seem, like, genuine almost because if all of these people all feel the same, like, does that really represent you deep down? And yeah, so what you were saying about how it trickles into different art forms, I was thinking about the TikTok I saw, which I also sent you, which was like kind of like a video essay of this guy talking about how Gen Z has like memeified everything. Like everything is a joke. And
Yeah.
depression and being unwell has become like a bit and an identity. So he used examples of the Unwell Network, like how being unwell is an aesthetic or something to like aspire to be, right? If we think about like this huge new podcast network that is named after
Right.
that. And then I don't know if you've heard of depression rooms and how that's like a
N
big thing on social media.
no. Give me the tea.
So, a big thing on TikTok, I don't know if it's on Instagram too, is like people taking pictures or videos of their depression rooms, which is basically like, I've been so depressed and look how out of control my room has gotten. And,
Oh, wow.
or like, let's clean my depression room together. And it's just like a room in complete chaos. And no judgment to that because we've all been there at a certain point. But his point was when something becomes like an aesthetic, it's something that we then aspire to be. So, isn't it weird that someone's going through depression and then they take a pause to take a picture of their room to share with the masses
Yeah.
because it's something that's almost like leaning into glorification of it, which is
Yeah. Wow.
interesting. And yeah, I think given the context of the society and world, like we've just tried to make fun and poke at everything. And like meme culture has made everything almost like a joke, right?
Yeah. I mean, in the article, which I thought was actually crazy, even though I see it a lot, apparently the hashtag trauma has over 6 billion, not million, billion
Wow.
views. That's pretty crazy, honestly. And yes, like, we all have trauma, but I think when you're right in that when it becomes a fixed identity, it's like, "Damn, this cannot be a way through move through life," you know? After going to therapy in and out for so many years for me, it finally clicked last year that I didn't want trauma or traumatic things that happened to me when I was, like, younger or whatever, to be my
Mhm.
identity anymore.
Mhm.
Because I felt like I was like, I have gotten to so much therapy, and this is where I knew I was doing so much better, is that I was like, "I feel like I deserve to release this. Like,
Hmm.
I deserve to not have this be, like, this naughty little secret that I have or something that I wear like a I don't even know, like a scarlet letter." And it really clicked for me when I went on a date last year, and this guy was just trauma dumping on date 1 and trauma dumping on date 2, and it was, like, really, really, really heavy for me. And obviously, that's a whole different thing, maybe don't bring that up on your first date, but I thought about how, like, if I would have gone on that date a year ago, I would have been, like, so turned on. Like, this guy being vulnerable or like, "Oh my god, me too," like, it would have been that moment, and I think part of the reason why so many past relationships for me had failed, it was because we were not in love, we were trauma bonding, and that's a very big distinction.
100%.
So, there was a moment where I was like, "Wow, we're not on the same page," because he told me, he was like, "Wow, like, you don't really, like, open up that much, do you?" And then that was a moment where I was like, "No, I do," but I was like, I just don't put that at the forefront anymore because I just don't think it's me." And that just came out of my mouth, and I was like, "Is she healed?" It was crazy.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes when it becomes your identity the same way that it was for me, it like really stopped me from moving forward and being happy. And this is coming from a place of like doing so much therapy, so many woo-woo healing things, all the things. So, this is like where like, I resonate with this article a lot because I'm someone that like went through it and had that at the forefront, and
Yeah, I feel you.
once I let it go, my life changed. And some people might be like, "Oh, well, that's privilege," like, la la it's like, no, I trust me, a girl has been dark,
I
but
know, like, you've gone through, like, a lot in your life,
yeah,
and we all have in different ways, right? Like, everything is, like, relative to what you've gone through.
totally. When I've said that to people before, they look at me like I'm a boomer. I was like, "Whoa, you don't get it, like, because, like, I have
Mhm.
this and I have that," and it's like, "No, I get you." Coming from the place that you were at before, I get you,
Yeah.
but you have to have the hope that you can heal, because I feel like that part of, like, "Well, you don't get me," talk can become a no, I have to be this way forever. And like, I'm here to tell you that you don't have to live that way.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work. Let me tell you, it was not easy, but I want people to have hope that they can change too, or they
I'm
can
with you.
manage mental illnesses as well because you can.
It's true. I thought of, like, a similar story too for myself where I realized that after my last relationships, like, when I went on dates, I wanted to, like, lead with the trauma and, like, all the stuff that my ex had put me through because it
Yeah.
felt like such a, "This is who I am, this represents me," and it wasn't until, like, I took a break from dating, like, really worked on myself that I realized, no, that's not information someone needs right away if we get into like a long intimate relationship and it's information that they need, then I'll bring it up, but it's like it no longer is a part of me, so I can completely relate to that evolution of how you view your trauma. But you're right, it does take a lot of work.
It does, and it also, if you are someone that's dealing with, like, mental illnesses, and I think the article does talk about this, right? How, like, you can only work on yourself so much too. Like, you don't wanna get in a loop where, like, your life is only 100% just working on yourself. That can be pretty exhausting as well. But there's also a positive side to mental illnesses that you have to explore because once you can manage them, they can become a strength in some ways, right? So, for example, ADD, like, yeah, you can be all chaotic, but when you love something, you can be the most beautiful, creative person in the world, right? Like, there's always a strength to who you are, but you have to find it and learn how to manage her to have that help you thrive in your own unique way.
True, like not resist it or hate it, but like make sure you're coexisting with it and co-creating with
Mhm.
it.
Exactly.
Um, shall I give my like my thoughts on what we've read in, like
I mean, baby, this is the conclusion part of the essay. So,
okay,
yes.
yes. Okay, so to conclude, but my conclusion's really long, guys. So I have a couple thoughts. First, to bring it back to the memification culture, how we're like memifying everything, I was thinking we're in a never ending loop because we've memified mental health and we want to show up online as like a quirky, funny, unserious person. And because mental health has become this memified thing, we're gonna continue perpetuating it, if that makes sense.
100%.
Like, I think of the different words and things that we have, like, I'm having a mentee B, and it's become so casual. Oh, yeah, if you didn't know, by the way, mentee B is like mental breakdown. But if someone did say that, I feel like years ago, you would be like, "Oh my god, like, what can I do to help? How can I be there to support you?" But because we say it so much and it's become like a joke, we're desensitized to it. So that's also like a
That's true.
con in my mind is that if everyone's saying they have anxiety, if everyone's saying that they are having a mental breakdown or whatever, are we going to be taking the people who actually really need support and help seriously?
I mean, totally. I think that when you're mimifying anything, you have to be careful because, yeah, sometimes you can be invalidating to the people that are like really, really, really struggling.
Exactly.
So, yeah, good point.
Thank you. But yeah, so with that, I also fear when will the loop end? Because as long as something's funny, it's going to continue to feed into itself.
Yeah.
And another thing, I came across this video and it just like made me think of what we're talking about, where this girl was on a Zoom with her therapist and he was basically telling her diagnosis after doing some testing. And he was like, "Oh, you have ADHD." And she was showing that part of the session and she was getting really emotional and she was saying it was very validating for her to get the diagnosis. But I was just thinking from an outside perspective, and no judgment on her, but just speaks to where we are as a culture. How crazy is it to show your therapy session to the masses? It feels not invasive, but what does that say about our culture that this is probably something that she's going to get validation for online and something people are
Mhm.
going to comment, share? But what does that say about our society and where we are that people are putting their mental health diagnosis in this intimate moment online for others to see?
And also another thing with getting diagnosed and going through the therapy journey, what works for you may not work for other people. And this goes back to like being mindful. You yourself need to go to your own therapist. Sometimes
Mhm.
people look at that and they're like, "Oh, she's so similar to me. Like what she's doing is going to work for me." And that's not the case. So it can be a dangerous thing because then the
Yeah.
people are just getting diagnosed and going through this journey with somebody, which might make you feel like, yeah, I'm not alone. But once again, you need to seek your own mental health professional at that point. A professional will tell you how to deal with your stuff as well. So,
Truth.
yeah. And then what I worry about it with this too is like if someone's page is just 100%, this is my diagnosis and this is like my mental health journey, kind of like what you were going through with like the losing weight and social media. It's like once, let's just say this person is healed, are they going to be holding on to it because it's content now? And how authentic is it? Sometimes people do this and it's not always with a good intention. So you have to be mindful as well of like what you're consuming because someone might be
Yeah,
dragging something on and you just don't know because you don't know the person.
I know.
So that's why I say like get your own therapist. It's good to feel like you have somebody there with you, but get your own help as well.
That's real. I will give an interesting anthropology fact. When I was at UCLA, I had to take a class. It was the anthropology of mental health.
Oh wow.
And one of the most interesting things that lives in my head rent free was that mental illnesses are cultural and labeled by society because if they were global and across humans, we would all have the same exact mental illnesses, basically. So
Mhm.
apparently, the only two mental illnesses that are seen across cultures but have different names are schizophrenia and depression. But other than
Mhm.
that, there are certain cultures that don't have a word for anxiety, don't have a word for ADHD. There's no like label for it. Not saying they're not real, but I'm just saying that from a cultural perspective, it's very innate to that culture what we label and define as mental health, which is interesting that you don't see it on a global scale, that they all exist, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It goes back to, like, limited access as well, right? So if there's no name for it, there's no solution for it either, so that's tough.
In a way, but culture and society define things in a different way. I mean, this might be like a hot take, but in some other culture, they see anxiety not like a positive thing, but it's a defense mechanism for living and being alive. Because technically, it was meant to be that when we were hunter and gatherers and there was physical threats to us.
That's really interesting because, yeah, you're right, like, a lot of these things are once again, overcorrection, like, I even think about my cat. He has, like, super kitty instincts, so, like, a noise, he's like, freaks out, you know, when it's like, "Honey, you live a luxury life, you
Yeah.
have, like, heater and nobody to hurt you," like, but it's an instinct, right? So, that's pretty fascinating too. No, I was gonna say, like, all in all, like, this episode, I think that the message is, like, that there is hope, you know, don't get so caught up in like meme culture, and media can be a really good thing because it makes us feel validated. But all in all, like I personally would like to send the message that you can get better and get on a healing path where it's not only 100% your identity. It can be a part of you, yes, but it's not 100% you. And I just want everybody to live a happy life, you know, and get on the healing journey too. Because someone that's been through it as well, like I can come out and say on the other side that it is possible, but it's going to take some time, you know?
Yeah, I love that. I think that is the message, that it's not your entire identity and it's something that you can work on and change. And that was the point of all of this, is just to be aware of our crazy overcorrections as a society and just have more sensitivity and observation with it, just have a look at what's going on and just see how it relates to you.
I love that.
But yeah, let us know if you guys like these little podcast essay format things. I'm like foaming at the mouth about it and I'm like, love it. But I want to make sure I'm not the only one who loves it. So let us know. And, the rules, like give us the 5 stars, follow us, say hi. You can DM us and say hi. You can tell us how you liked this episode at Chatty Rats Pod. Love you, little rats.
Yeah, we love you so much. Bye bye.